Let's go to this chat now. The ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, says its negotiating team will spend the next couple of days entering into fresh round of discussions with political parties, both inside and outside the Government of National Unity. This follows a marathon and National Working Committee meeting at Luthuli House on Monday to discuss the impasse over the passing of the budget. At the same time, parties outside the GNU say that they will not even consider joining the coalition if the VAT hike comes into effect on the 1st of May. For more on this, let's now speak to ANC spokesperson Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri. Mahlengi, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Tell us about the meeting that took place on Monday and why the ANC NWC decided to rather look at a reset of the GNU, whereas on the other end, on that leak audio that we've listened to with the Deputy President as well as the President of the ANC when they were addressing the parliamentary caucus of the ANC ahead of the framework budget vote, the issue there was that the Democratic Alliance has now essentially defined themselves outside the GNU, and as the Secretary General had said, even in yesterday's press briefing, the posture that has been taken by the Democratic Alliance is that of an opposition. Why didn't you give them the boot?
Well, we are taking a strong, thank you for having us, Aldrin. We're taking a very strong stance on the conduct of the Democratic Alliance in the past 9 months, whilst being part of the National Executive. But it is important that this thing is not just about what the ANC feels. It is about galvanizing the whole of society, seeking consensus, getting information also, or views rather, of the various sectors in our society. In our statement, we mentioned religious formations, we mentioned business, we mentioned other sectors whose views are very important in discussing how the GNU has performed, what is it that we need to do to make it stronger, if we must stay with the Government of National Unity in the formation or in the form it is in now, and also how to ensure that there's overall stability in governance as well as in Parliament, to also allow Parliament not to be bedeviled by these kinds of squabbles, but focus on the oversight and lawmaking mandate of Parliament. So if this thing were about just the ANC and the DA, I suppose the National Working Committee would have not taken the time it took to look at various permutations and also to elect to hit the reset button on the GNU. And what do we mean by that? We simply mean that we are still committed to the Government of National Unity. We have no option of leaving the Government of National Unity because we established it, having been the largest party in Parliament, but with reduced majority. And so we went through that consensus-seeking process for a reason, because for us it's important that we listen to the electorate, but more than that, it is important that we look at the national interest overall with calm and a sense of maturity, which we have come to be known for in as far as how we've managed this whole setting up of the Government of National Unity. There are serious issues that are obstructing progress in as far as that is concerned, and we highlight there the conduct of the Democratic Alliance, both as a party as well as through the ministers that represent or are coming from the DA in government in terms of undermining the known and established protocols in government, including the executive ethics code. A number of ministers who come from the DA, in another world, there probably would have been sanctions meted out on them for undermining the sovereignty of our state, in going to the US and mobilizing in the way they're mobilizing against South Africa overall, but more specifically then asking the US administration to focus on the ANC leaders. That's just but one of the many examples. And then, of course, the rejection of all transformation legislation since the beginning of the GNU, including the Expropriation Act. All of those things are indicators of a party that is anti-transformation. And South Africans surely should see that for what it is. The statement of intent that establishes this government of national unity is crystal clear insofar as it says the parties to the GNU commit themselves to redress and transformation. So the reset button is to reopen negotiations with the parties, firstly on the budget. So our initial consultations are then on the budget so that we can break this impasse. And of course, we're going to be speaking to everyone. I see the DA leadership frowning upon the fact that the ANC is going to be speaking to all parties. It's in the nature of the ANC. Even when we set up the government of national unity, the idea was that let's all align around a common agenda as parties that have now been voted into parliament by the people of South Africa.
Yeah, but wouldn't they be correct to be frowning on that decision that the ANC has taken to negotiate with parties outside the government of national unity? Because you speak about the statement of intent. If we go to clause 24 of the statement of intent, it says that in keeping with the spirit of inclusive GNU, it is agreed that the composition shall be discussed and agreed amongst the existing parties whenever new parties desire to be part of the GNU. So it seems as though that the ANC is going against that particular clause. Even starting the negotiation with other political parties to get the fiscal framework passed, you didn't follow what is here in the statement of intent.
Absolutely incorrect. Here's the thing. The party that has signed that statement of intent decides to litigate Parliament and the executive. So, in fact, that clause immediately falls off when you have a party that is in government decides to operate as an opposition. That clause immediately falls off. That clause immediately falls off when you have a party in government that disregards other sections of the statement of intent. The party that's in government with us decides to go mobilize in the cap of the party, decides to mobilize against South Africa's foreign policy and continues to do so outside of the GNU. I think that horse has already bolted. That is why we're talking about this reset. We do need proper rules of accountability, and anyone who decides to stay in the government of national unity needs to recommit to those, but not just recommit. There has got to be very clear protocols agreed to, an agreement to how we conduct ourselves. Are we in government or are we in opposition? So, I just wanted to talk about that clause, Andre. I don't think that...
But then the ANC itself would then also be foul of that particular clause, because you went and you negotiated with other political parties outside the government of national unity to get that fiscal framework passed. And I believe, Mahlengi, that the Democratic Alliance actually has a point. While the ANC accuses the Democratic Alliance of taking a posture of an opposition, it seems as though that the ANC itself is struggling with the posture of power sharing and what power sharing looks like.
Well, I repeat this, and I really want to underscore this point, that in fact, the government of national unity continues to work, and the ANC has not been operating outside of the government of national unity insofar as the running of government. None of the sort. Up until a time when the DA went to court, up until a time when the DA made it clear, even before then, that they were not going to support the passing of the budget. Now, when you have people that you are in an agreement, a cooperation with, which is not a coalition, deciding to reject the budget of the country, when they have not even rejected the State of the Nation address, which this budget seeks to finance, do so consistently. Instead of discussing the budget, they push you to discuss land reform. They push you to discuss the operations of National Treasury, and so on and so on. What option is there to any self-respecting organization? We also have indicated, so the negotiation around the budget is a standard procedure in Parliament. Where there's a stalemate on an issue, the chief whip of the majority party must work with others in finding a solution. That cannot be construed as operating outside of the government of national unity. It is standard in the operations of parliament. In the chief whip forum, in the programming, these things are managed that way. So there hasn't been a thing of going outside of the GNU. It is the DA that's gone outside of the GNU. But the decision we've taken is to then actually hear from the DA where the extent of their commitment to a GNU that works, that is stable, that works in the interests of the people of South Africa. They are the ones who must explain the actions they've taken. And the idea that the ANC must answer for the DA is also another thing that we take a dim view of that.
I disagree. I disagree, Mahlengi. It almost seems as though what the ANC is trying to do here is it's a cop-out, essentially. The Secretary General of the party speaks about the powers of the president, that the members of the executive serve at the behest of the president, and that is indeed the truth. But then you must leave it up to the Democratic Alliance what they want to do. But why isn't the president acting? If you have members of a Democratic Alliance, as you are saying, part of the executive that are lobbying against the state that is being run by the first citizen, then surely the first citizen must act.
Well, we are continuing with the negotiations as the ANC. You are correct in saying that those powers, the executive powers that the president has, must and can be exercised. And we don't know whether the president is not going to exercise those powers. I can't answer the when question because I'm not in the mind of the president. But there is nothing that says, or there's nowhere where president has said, I am not going to reprimand and the measures that he takes to do so. So that, I suppose it's best left to the president. We don't know when, if it happens, if it does happen. But in the meantime, we must resolve the impasse around the budget. It is important for parties to come together. And it is important for us not to just throw our toys. Let's sit down with the Democratic Alliance. Let's understand the power sharing aspect that you also referred to, given the fact that they already are in government, they control ministries, they pursue what is best in those departments to realign them with the national mandate, and I suppose with the DA mandate as well. So how far do we go with this idea of a power-sharing deal? Secondly, they are the 20% party, and there are other parties to the GNU. We will continue to insist that the parties to the GNU, the 8 of them, should not be disregarded simply because the DA doesn't recognize them, recognizes the fact that they have to contend with the 40% party that the ANC has become.
All right. Let's quickly deal with the geopolitics issues. That was one of the parts that were touched on by the NWC as well. And this is looking at the retaliatory tariffs coming from the United States. Those tariffs kick in today. The president had also promised us that there will be a delegation that will be set up to go and to various countries to go and explain to them our policies. Not too sure how far we are with regards to that. But what is the ANC's take on how the government is responding to this particular impasse? I just quickly want to read, I think it's an X that I saw a bit earlier on from Mteto Nyati, who is the chairperson of ESCOM, where he speaks about this ongoing impasse between the members of the Government of National Unity. He writes that, how I wish that our politicians can sort out South Africa's budget issues through compromises that deliver a win-win outcomes and put South African citizens first. They can then focus on the pressing issue of mending South Africa-US relations. Is this too much to ask for the future and our children?
I think he is definitely spot on, Mr. Mteto Nyati. But let us, indicate the following. One, we want government to explore all available diplomatic protocols to ensure that we address our positioning in the geopolitical environment with a specific focus on the latest stance or posture by the U.S. administration, exhaust all diplomatic protocols. And that, of course, is in the trade area as well as in the DECO space. And we've welcomed a presentation that was done to the National Working Committee, quite extensive account and characterization of the current moment in geopolitics. and advised that both DECO and the DTIC should continue to work, in a collaborative manner in finding solutions and finding a deal that can work for South Africa's national interest in future negotiations. There are negotiations that are taking place as we speak. They are continuing on all of those aspects. So it is not that there isn't much work in the back end that is taking place, including engaging officials in the US administration. For the part of the ANC, there is going, for example, there are going to be public hearings, that are going to be hosted by US Congress in respect of the legislation involving South Africa. We are going to ask to participate in all of those things together with our allies internationally so that our views is put across. So we've not taken a view that says, pack up and go, or we'll pack up and go. We've taken a view that says we must continue to engage with the world, the rest of the world, in the spirit of multilateralism, engage with the US administration, pursue the national interest, and protect the national interest, at the same time, not isolating ourselves from the rest of the world, because that will be disastrous for a country such as South Africa.